All right, today we're jumping into a really powerful story from the book of Jeremiah, and it's all about a choice that couldn't be more black and white. Literally, life or death for an entire people.
So is listening really a matter of life or death? I mean, that sounds pretty dramatic, right? But what if I told you that in the final desperate days of ancient Judah, that was pretty much the only question that mattered? Everything, I mean everything, came down to whether or not you were willing to listen.
And the way this all plays out is through this just wild contrast. On one side, you've got the king and the entire nation. And on the other, this forgotten little clan that nobody even noticed. So, who do you think listened and who didn't? Let's dig in and find out.
All right, so first up, let's look at the nation of Judah. And you got to understand, the scene here is bleak. We're talking about the final days, the last king on the throne, Zedekiah, and things are about as bad as they can possibly get.
Now, before we go any further, we need to talk about this word covenant. Think of it this way. It's not just a promise. It's like a super serious, binding contract with God himself. And with an enemy army at the gates, well, the people of Jerusalem suddenly get very interested in making one of these covenants.
And here's where you get this incredible whiplash. The whole thing happens in a flash. First, the Babylonian army is literally at the gates. Everyone's terrified. So the king and all the people make this big, solemn vow to free their Hebrew slaves. You know, something God's law had told them to do for ages. It seems like this huge moment of repentance. But then, the Babylonians pull back for a second. The pressure's off. And what happens? Bam! Instantly, they go back on their word and re-enslave everyone. Just like that.
And God's response? Whoa. It is one of the most chilling cases of the punishment fits the crime you will ever read. He basically says, oh, you refuse to proclaim liberty for your own people? Fine. I'll proclaim a liberty for you, the liberty to die by war, disease, and starvation. It's just this absolutely devastating takedown of their hypocrisy.
Okay, so you've got this picture of total national failure, right? Hold that thought, because now we're going to turn to our second group, this mysterious clan called the Rechabites. And believe me, this is where things get really interesting.
So who are these guys? The easiest way to think about the Rechabites is kind of like the Israelite Amish. Seriously, they were this nomadic group that intentionally lived on the fringes, separate from everyone else. They followed their own strict set of rules, all designed to keep them pure and away from the corruption of the society around them.
And get this, their whole way of life was based on a vow made by their ancestor, a guy named Jonadab, 200 years earlier. He laid down the law for all his descendants. No wine, ever. Don't build houses. Live in tents. Don't plant crops or own vineyards. Basically, be nomads forever. That was the deal.
And here's the beautiful, mind-bending irony of it all. Remember God's promises to his people? He promised them blessings like houses they didn't have to build and vineyards they didn't have to plant. Well, the Rechabites, they voluntarily gave up those exact same things. They were literally turning their back on the typical blessings of God in order to remain obedient to their ancestor.
So God decides to put them to the test. It's a dramatic scene. Jeremiah, the prophet of God, brings the whole clan into the temple itself. He puts pitchers of wine in front of them and says, "Drink," a direct command from a prophet. And what do? They refuse, flat out. They say, "Sorry, we can't. We have to obey the command our forefather Jonadab gave us 200 years ago."
And that's the moment. That's the setup for the most powerful contrast in the entire story. God now has the perfect example to hold up in front of Judah. And the fallout from this comparison is, well, it changes everything.
So let's just lay it all out. It's so stark. You have the nation of Judah, they get a direct command from God himself, and they break it, like the next day. The result? Death. Total destruction. Then you have the Rechabites. They get a command from a human ancestor, not even God, and they keep it for 2 centuries. The result for them? Life. A future. Wow. The message just couldn't be any louder or clearer.
But, you know, this story is about more than just pointing fingers at Judah. It's actually pointing us to a huge reoccurring idea that you see all through the biblical narrative. And that's the idea of the faithful remnant.
So what is the faithful remnant? It's this really powerful promise, this idea that no matter how dark things get, no matter how far a nation strays, God always keeps a small group of people safe. A tiny minority who stay faithful, who keep listening. And that small group, that's the seed. That's where hope for the future lies.
The really tragic thing here, though, is that you can actually watch this remnant shrink as things get worse and worse in Judah. I mean, first you have the Rechabites, an entire clan, a whole group of families is promised a future. But as the story goes on, the remnant gets smaller and smaller until it's down to just one man, a single person, Jeremiah's scribe, Baruch.
And check out the promise God makes to him. Someone once called it an old soldier's joke. It's like, after all the chaos, the destruction, the war, what's your prize? What's your reward? You get to escape with your life. That's the prize, just your life. And sounds so small, but when everything else is gone, it's absolutely everything. He's what's left. He is the remnant.
So all of this leaves us with a really powerful question to chew on. Think about it. This clan was blessed, profoundly blessed, for being stubbornly loyal to a human vow, a tradition. So what does that say about the power of our own commitments? What does it say about the things we promise to do, and who or what we decide is worth listening to?